I've got this little painting project I want to take care of here, and the SprayStation 5500 is the perfect tool to do this. I found this little table at a second-hand store, and I actually want a little table for my back patio that's black, and this is already black, but you can see the paint's peeling off and it's not looking so good. So I'll need to clean this up a little bit so I can spray a nice coat of paint over it. So I'm going to use a wire brush first to get off the loose stuff, and I'm going to go through the grooves that are in the top of the table here, and I'm going to use the brush at a little bit of an angle so it cuts right into that loose paint. And you can see it just flaking off. I'm not using any pressure here. Let the tool do the job. You just kind of scrape along until the loose stuff comes off. You can see it powdering up and moving around. It's really simple to do. Basically what I'm going to do here, so I'm going to do this for about 15 minutes until I've got all these flakes off, and then I'm going to hit it with 180 and 220 sandpaper to get it nice and smooth. You want to do that because the difference in height between the paint and no paint might show up. If I had 6 layers of paint on this, I would probably strip it first. In this case, I've only got one thin layer of paint, so I'm just going to sand it real good. Alright, so I've wire brushed down the table, gotten all the loose paint off it, sanded with 180 grit, finished it out with 220 grit. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my HVLP air and just blow off the loose dust and everything, and we're going to spray a white primer coat on the whole table. So here's how we do that. I'm going to turn on the SprayStation. Look at that. I want to get all that loose stuff out of here. You don't want anything getting caught up in your new coating. I'm going to flip the table over. I want to get all the loose stuff off everywhere. Okay. Now here's the trick to doing a table or a chair or anything that's kind of awkward to spray all the way around on all sides at once. Do the bottoms, the backs first. Doesn't matter what it is. Cabinet doors, do the backs first. Tables like this, do the bottoms first. Makes it a lot easier to move ahead. Because if anything goes wrong on the bottom, it's not nearly as noticeable as if it's right on the top where everybody's looking. So I'm going to fire up the SprayStation. We're going to spray a white primer on here. I'm going to flip it over so I can spray the top all at the same time. It's take me a couple of minutes, and then we're going to set it aside to dry, and we'll come back and sand it before we put on a final top coat. So on this side of the table, we've got some grooves that we need to make sure that we get paint deep into those grooves. So I'm going to prime them first by spraying with the circle pattern, spraying straight down into that groove. Now I'm going back to my fan pattern. I'm going to open up the flow a little bit so I get a little more material out. A little bit more. There we go. Now on furniture finishing type projects like this, you want to stay real close to your project, somewhere between 4 and 6 inches. And in this case, I'm using a 1.5 millimeter needle. Now we've got a good coat of primer on here. All we want to do is set it aside, let it dry for 30 minutes so we can do a light sanding and then put a final coat of black paint on top of it. So we're going to spray a latex top coat on this table I found. I've already got it primed and dried. But first we need to prepare the latex paint. You can't just put latex paint in the system and expect it to spray out. It needs to be thinned to at least the viscosity that the tool is rated at. In this case, the SprayStation 5500 is rated at 160 seconds. So as long as the paint passes through the viscosity cup in that amount of time or less, we'll be fine spraying it. I'm going to take you through the procedure right now. First, what we want to do, take the cup off the gun. And we're going to pour our latex paint into the cup, and we're going to fill it just about to this level, just below where the bell starts. Hopefully I can do this without spilling too much. You can see how thick that paint is. That definitely needs to be thinned. There we go. So we've got our viscosity cup. This is the tool that comes with all the spray stations. I'm going to show you how you use this. We know it's too thick. I'm going to automatically put 10% water into this cup. And that's easy enough to do because if you hold your finger over the hole in the bottom of the viscosity cup, the cup actually holds exactly 4 ounces. That's slightly more than 10% of a quart of paint. So it makes it real easy. So we're just going to use our water bottle to do this. And I'm going to hold the cup over the paint. And when I get that filled up, all I'm going to do is let it drain off into the paint. Now, this will only take a couple of seconds. And at this point, you need to stir the mixture together. You can't shake it. You should never shake a finish or a paint because what happens is you put bubbles in it. Those bubbles can stay in the finish, through the spray, out of the gun, and onto your project, and then they pop. That can cause you problems later on. So yeah, I hear you out there, you're saying, but they shake the can at the store when I bought it. Well, that's true, but there's no air in the can when they shake it that first time. As soon as you pop the top off your can of paint, then now there's air introduced into the paint. So you really need to make sure you stir it. Proper stirring technique is gentle. So I'm just going to put the stick in and I'm going to swirl the paint around and I'm going to pull the paint stick out, and what I can see is that the water runs off the stick first and then the paint starts to run off the stick. You'll know that you're done mixing when the water and the paint works at the same time. So I'm just going to spend a minute here stirring this up and occasionally pulling the stick out, and you can actually see as the water becomes part of the paint how it rolls off the stick much nicer. I think you can probably already see that. Now when I get this mixed up, the first thing I want to do is test my viscosity. There, that looks pretty good. We're going to try our viscosity cup here. I've got my little automatic timer here. Basically, you dip the cup down into the paint, let the cup fill with paint, and when you pull it out of the paint, you start your timer. Now you can see the paint running out of the bottom of the cup. Basically, we're measuring the surface tension of the paint and how it's going to move and flow on your project. So as I'm watching it drain, you can see it going out of the cup. Basically what I'm waiting for is the first time this stream breaks. It doesn't necessarily mean the cup is completely empty. Just when this stream breaks, we know that our surface tension is at a certain point. Well, we're getting close here. We're at about 130 seconds. As long as we fall under 160, it's going to be good to go. That's 140. That keeps us well within our range for the Ehrlich spray station. So we're going to put the gun together and we're going to get ourselves set up so we can spray our top coat on this project. I just showed you how to mix and thin your paint. We're using a black latex semi-gloss. It's going to make the table look really nice. We thinned it about 15%, so we've got a viscosity rating around 130 seconds. That's going to spray beautifully through the gun. And we're going to start the same way we did with the primer. We're going to flip it over and do the bottoms first and work our way up to the top. Now I'm going to use the circle pattern in this case because I want to control the width of my spray pattern so I'm not spraying 6 inches wide on these legs that are only 1.5 inches. I'll tell you, one of the nice things about latex paints, you don't necessarily have to wait for it to dry to do a second coat. If you see a spot that you hit a little bit too light, you can go ahead and hit it right now and make sure you've got enough coverage everywhere. So now that I've got the bottom well done, I'm going to flip the thing over and we're going to spray the top. Well, there you go. I think it looks great. Now what we got to do is we got to let this dry really good. The thing with latex paint is it takes a little bit longer to cure than most other finishes. So you want to set this aside and not set anything on it for a couple of days.